about the topic of innovation, and particularly global innovation, and how innovation is managed at the global level, where the consumer is global, how innovation can create a competitive advantage and create true differentiation, and how to compete with innovation. And then obviously there are some internal factors about managing innovation in a global context which must be talked about, because they are slightly different. And I think our guest speaker tonight, Dr. Trevor Francis, will give you the real live case study. I will introduce Trevor in a few minutes, but just as a kickoff in the usual way, maybe we need to understand some basic aspects of innovation and some of the factors that face businesses wanting to compete at the global level. One of the metrics that is used basically to help create a competitive advantage is time to market, and basically that is the speed, the agility, the innovativeness, and the quality of positioning businesses in the marketplace. So industry time to market is the barometer basically for looking at fast innovators in an industry, and you can see the differences between what we call the average innovators, the followers, and the best in class who are leaders in terms of innovation. And also you can see the cycle of innovativeness in terms of weeks from industry sector to industry sector. I'm not interested in the numbers in this chart. I'm interested in the message that comes out of it, and that is that we live in an era where the cycle of innovation, the compression of new product development cycle time, the management of the whole innovation cycle from inception to basically serving the customer is a key determinant of how successful you are. Why? It's because if you are first, you have the biggest slice of the cake. I remember many years ago, Unilever used to say, it's better to be good and first rather than being best and last. Because if you're good and first, you're the best. The customer does not see otherwise. And I think it's really a question about tactics. It's about tripping your competitors so that they are followers. You always want them to be behind, because if they are ahead of you and they have entered the market with the same idea or a similar idea before you, then you are on the back foot, and that means going back to the drawing board, abandoning your innovation portfolio, all the wonderful ideas that you want to work with, and trying to catch up. Playing catch up is painful, and maybe Trevor will touch a little bit on this. So I think that is really the measure, the true measure of true innovation and innovativeness. Time to market, and you could see it in all the industries. The proliferation of products and services, the variants that you find, whether it's in electronics goods, whether it is in basically consumables, whether it's in cosmetics, whether it's even travel, for example, is one which is driven by time to market. Special offers, special packages, 2-in-1, buy one and we'll upgrade you for the second one to business class. Buy this package and you get 3 days in somewhere nice and sunny and everything else. That's innovation. So it touches the consumer. That's at the end of it. This quote was done by a Japanese business many years ago, but I mean, reflecting on it now in the 21st century, the statement is still valid. In a highly competitive market, we are able to manipulate market share almost at will. Why does that happen? Is because innovation has basically transformed the business focus. You can tweak and optimize, change and modify and influence when your product or service is performing in the marketplace. I think years ago, if you launched a product or a service and there was something wrong with it, you had no other option but to recall it and to fix it before you do it again. But by that time, that break has created a perception in the mind of the customer that you're not good at it. You know, you haven't given them quality right first time. And, you know, we can give you lots of examples, lots of case studies about failures. Unilever, for example, you know, created the first shampoo, the 2-in-1 shampoo, a product called Dimension. But they launched it too quickly. In those days, they didn't create the transformational aspects that will enable it to tweak product qualities in the marketplace. And they had to recall it back because it confused the consumer. The consumer thought, why do I have to buy 2 bottles to get the effect of 1? That's how it came across. And by that time, obviously, Procter & Gamble latched on the idea and they came up with Head and Shoulders, and then basically they captured market share. And I think it still hurts because since 1989, Unilever has still not recovered its dominance in the shampoo business, although they've launched some very successful innovation like organics and you know, various innovations like that. So you manipulate the market share because you've got that ability to launch a product, to launch a different variant, to differentiate, and to dictate the premium pricing, to dictate the distribution, to influence the mind of the consumer, and to work on the brand, and so on and so forth. It's a wonderful position to be in. I think in the 21st century, and when we talk about global innovation, we're not talking about incrementalism. You know, the tweaking is your chance to stay in business, but I think incrementalism alone does not give you differentiation, true differentiation. So as it says here, incrementalism is innovation's worst enemy. What you want is really to pierce through with new ideas that have global appeal, those that give you the leap and the advantage over the customers. There has been an era where people thought technology will dominate, and it's really putting technology at the forefront and maintaining a culture of incrementalism behind it. Many industries thought that would be enough to give them a competitive advantage. Well, it's proven now that technology by itself is not the answer. E-business, for example, of e-commerce, is not having the best website, the most sophisticated portal where the consumer can have access and shop at their ease. It's still about, if you remember my talk last week, I said to E and to I. You know, you must still feel the customer. You must still, you know, focus on their unmet needs. You must tickle their feelings. You must focus on the brand. You still need to advertise. So technology is an enabler, but it's not a substitute for true innovation. It is really understanding what are the business issues and how technology can help us. And maybe Trevor will talk a little bit about some of the technologies that help with time to market. One of the technique, it's a little bit old now, rapid prototyping. You know, using computer-aided design so that marketeers, brand managers, development engineers can look at shapes, they can do what if, they can modify, and they can make a consensus. So you don't have to go to the laboratory and, you know, build mocks of packages and build prototypes of products, which take time, which cost you money, although it will not cost you a lot of money. Now you can do it real time, you know, using technology. So yes, technology has helped the cycle of global innovation, but to what extent, that is really the issue. So as Peter Drucker said, what is innovation? Innovation is measured from the point of view of the customer. As long as the customer perceives that they're getting something new, and the word new here is very important. Incrementalism is really trying to fool the customer because incrementalism does not equate to newness. So new, and also innovation is about creating competitive advantage. It's about differentiation. If it doesn't achieve those two goals, one for us, which is a competitive advantage and differentiation, the other one is satisfaction to the customer because they perceive it to be new and fulfilling their needs, then we cannot call it innovation. Okay? Role of innovation, various studies, and I'm just going to give you some quotes here. I think we can rest assured that as we embark on the 21st century, that most businesses recognize that innovation has a central role to play, This is a survey in 2003. 26% of the surveyed companies said innovation basically is a key driver for them because it's the tool that they will use to identify and fulfill the unmet needs of their customers. 23% defined innovation as newness, the advancement or the improvement, or finding better ways of doing things. And they also looked at competition and technology change as the key drivers for innovation, because technology gives you the enabling opportunity. Competition gives you the spur, gives you that the momentum basically to maintain the advantage, the edge that you have over them. Otherwise, if they leapfrog you, it's harder to catch up. It's always harder to catch up. It's easier to maintain a position once you are in a leadership status. 54% said that their companies have increased investment in innovation over the past 2 years. And again, because the factors of differentiation, which tend to be product-based, service-based, quality or value for money-based, are the norm nowadays. You know, we talk about them as, yes, but so I can get it somewhere else. The dimension of innovativeness or innovation is really what the customer gets excited about. And the more we replenish that dimension, the more we shrink the cycle time of development, the more we work on this time to market, the more we're going to sustain that competitive advantage. Another survey, Bain & Cove, 80% of respondents said that becoming more innovative is really one of the top 3 business priorities. 91% said that increasing their ability to innovate was a critical feature for them to create a competitive advantage and earning profits. Another one, 61% of executives said the importance of innovation has increased. And these are very credible, very significant, and very substantial pieces of research. So, yes, innovation is important. We put that aside. Now, what drives it? Discontinuities. And I'll come back to this in a minute. Give people the opportunity to be more innovative and helps them focus more and more on the business. Because discontinuity is really a fight back against incrementalism. Because you're challenging status quo, you're looking out of the box, you're also shaking the culture. You're saying, what if scenarios, breaking walls, building synergies amongst people, stretching out to leverage from outside, using partnerships, and so on and so forth. So it is about transformational thinking. It's about shifting paradigm. You cannot innovate globally unless you do those paradigm shifts. And technology is there to help. And you know, it's, you know, virtuality is reality. You can network with the whole world, with your suppliers, with universities, with centers of excellence, with R&D labs in Japan, in Korea, in Brazil, wherever it is. And I think we will hear the case study tonight. So when you talk about global innovation, it's not just from the point of view of the downstream aspect, that is the distribution of the innovation to global market, but what about the upstream side of innovation? You know, the hands and the minds and the input and the influence towards designing and developing the projects. That also is global, a global way of working. Very challenging, very unique, and I'm sure that we will all have pleasure in listening to Trevor today talk about that. I think the key challenge in 21st century global innovation is talent, dearth to talent, because you're moving away from relying on silos. You're moving away from relying on specialism as standalone disciplines. You know, we're working more and more into these integrated, multidisciplinary islands of creative communities, you know, that basically take a challenge and they come up with options and solutions. And you need a special talented people for that. So collaboration is key to that. And it's really not about based on the path of the past. more global innovations now are blueprints. They haven't been tried before. You know, they are high risk, high reward, if you like, projects. So problem-based learning is something new. You know, try option A. It works to some extent, but it's going to be costly. We know we can do it, but we're not going to drive the business into bankruptcy. Let's look at another option. So you create and you abandon or you shelve, then you go to another option. And it's all learning. It's not problem solving in terms of the practicalities of optimizing and, you know, trying to make something meet a presupposed and published standard. Global innovation have no standard. You know, blank sheets of papers, blueprints, time to market is the goal, and then inspiring the customer so you create a global competitive advantage is the end goal, and that's what you're trying to do. And of course it's expensive. And yes, we can talk about the likes of Unilever, PLC and others because they have abundant resources so they can fund their own global innovation. But I mean, I think for the SMEs, for example, if we talk about this paradigm, we need to really get innovation more recognized at government level and foster, if you like, centers of excellence that would help. So the case for innovation is made. This is another study which looked at knowledge-based competitiveness, and the study has identified 33 best practice case studies, and they have listed basically loads of dimensions of knowledge-based competitiveness or knowledge-based work. And but the case for innovation in the study is that you need a culture that really fosters innovative thinking. So first of all, you need sharing. Knowledge management is about sharing of best practice. You need to be open to ideas and suggestions and out-of-the-box thinking. You need to encourage learning because learning is the fuel for innovation. You know, people can give you the eureka factor, but you must really invest them beforehand. You need to encourage synergy, collaborations, internally and externally. And you need to have a culture that works on trust because, you know, high risk means you can trust people. And of course, innovation itself, but it's only a subset of everything else that has been mentioned here. Again, Peter Drucker claims that innovation is the ability to measure the performance thereof and is the one competence needed for the future. You know, as we progress forward, knowledge-based work, knowledge-based competitiveness is about ideas, nothing else. The product does not inspire, the service does not inspire, new ideas inspire, you know, and customers would want more and more and more of those. Let me just now differentiate between two types of innovations. One, which I called customer-centric. Basically, it's how to continue to service an existing base of customers, but how to help them with their own endeavors. So relationship management is, if you are a B2B, for example, you know, you supply another, suppliers who will supply their own customers and so on. So if they become more profitable, then we are profitable as well. But profitable does not just mean in terms of monetary terms. If you are a B2C and you supply consumers of products, what does profitable mean to them? It means it has fulfilled and satisfied their needs and expectations. So it has been, in terms of value for money for them, it has been worth the investment. It has been worth being loyal to the brand. It has been worth going every week and, you know, and buying comfort and so to speak. So that is the customer-centric side. But also, it's about the internal side, extending the intellectual capital of the business. I think in the old days, and even with my association with the likes of Unilever, innovation tended to be in the hands of the marketeers. If you are a design engineer, or if you are in production or supply chain, you know, you are a little bit remote from the customer. So the knowledge, the collective knowledge that existed on process, on product, on quality of the product, was never if you like, optimized. Because the people who used to make the decisions are the brand managers, the marketeers. They have the budgets, they have the ability to influence and make the decisions. But that, of course, has changed. Because now, with the 21st century, particularly for global innovation, the shift now is how to harness all of that intellectual capital across the board, how to increase that flow and transfer of knowledge and best practice. So knowledge-driven innovation is the other type, which is looking at the value of the intellectual capital, because that is the measure, the true measure of an innovative business. If you go to 3M or if you go to Nokia, you will find that 80% of their employees are working in innovation-related activities, nothing else. Everything else is outsourced. Everything else is non-core. Somebody else can do it for us, cheaply, faster, better quality. But what we want to retain are the people who generate the ideas, who can complement each other. So when we put them together and we permeate basically the teams, they give us 1 + 1 = 4, 80%. Okay. That's really what knowledge-driven innovation is. So the hallmark is the value of the intellectual capital. So it's leveraging what exists already, new out of the old innovation. Lessons learned, maybe Trevor will talk about that, every time you make a journey, you launch a variant, you change your packaging, you add another ingredient, by the time you finish that project, and sometimes it takes 6 months, sometimes a year and a half, there's some learning there. That's innovation. But also, it's the out-of-the-box thinking, the expanding the intellectual capital, the new. It doesn't exist. And it's really about balancing out, so that you have your baseline innovation, your bread and butter, but also you've got the ideas for the future, because they are the ones that give you the big leaps. Very quickly, because we said that knowledge-based innovation depends on our ability to manage the intellectual capital, I'll just run very quickly through this list of what is it that needs to be adhered to if we are to become an effective global innovator. First of all, ownership of that human capital is not just ours. Because at the end of the day, we work on collaborative approaches. Some input comes from the supplier, some input comes from the customer, some input comes from our own employees, some input we buy from consultants. We engage them into the innovation process. So we need to establish that. We don't own everything. It's a shared asset. The second thing is, as a driver, we need to create communities of practice for innovation. We need to create teamwork where the interdisciplinarity basically channels those energies and those ideas across the board. And that will be all the process, the life cycle of innovation, capturing the ideas, looking at feasibility and formalization, and then capitalizing on the downstream aspects, project management, teams leading the projects and bringing them to a successful end. We also need to look at the total core competencies that exist, and that is the organizational wealth, intellectual wealth, which is skills, talent, and which belong to the organization. And we need to use them at strategic level so that when we say knowledge-based innovation, we know what we're talking about. Somebody that Trevor could use, for example, could be in Thailand, somebody else could be in Argentina. Who is the best designer for this packaging? Who is the best in formulation for this product? And you have access to all the asset, that is owned by the organization all over the world. Then you can truly talk about global innovation, because you designed it from a global perspective, using stakeholders who are global, but also downstream, you are distributing it to global consumers. You're creating global appeal. That's very, very powerful. And having access to ideas, getting the customer to be a stakeholder in the innovation process, that requires transformation. You can't just one day say, of course, we'll ask our customers their opinion. Nonsense. You've got to have the protocols for sharing data, sharing information, capturing data from the customers, getting feedback, listening to their voices, visiting them, and registering their complaints and using them for innovation and so on. And making sure the knowledge we have needs either ready to hand or easy to get. Because time to market means you have to be good at first rather than being best and last. That's very important. Can inexpensive, intangible ideas work, or costly physical assets means that the risk basically on innovation is at all the stages. In the old days, you do a prototype because it's cheap. You can break it, you can really test it to the limit to death, and by the time you proceed with a life cycle of innovation, the cost goes up. Now, basically, because it's global innovation, it's it could be really even challenging the physical assets that you have. The risk is the same throughout, but you have to accept that. That risk has to be managed. Knowledge work is custom made, means that we talked about CRM last time, we talked about customer experience management, we talked about the me only kind of thing, how to create economies of scale, economies of scope, mass customization. So the customer feels that you're only inventing and innovating just for them. And knowledge work, as I said, is as you get closer to the customer, that's where the richness of feedback, of interactions with the customer is intense, and therefore we can capitalize from that. Virtual value chains means the flow of information is really the most important thing as the flow of materials, because that's the old 20th century physical value chain. Okay? You push products out, you push services out from one stage of development to another. Now we can innovate with the minds. 80% of the car is manufactured outside, sub-assembled outside. The new Airbus, the 380 Airbus, if you read the story, it's absolutely amazing. Everything is sub-assembled by hundreds and thousands of suppliers and brought in at an assembly point. How does that happen? It's a global innovation, but it's to perfection. The 777, the Boeing 777, I was listening to their Vice President Quality in Seattle recently, and she was talking about they managed 3,300 suppliers, putting it all together. And she said the slogan was 3 million pieces flying in total harmony, flying together, because they were brought in together. That's global innovation, managed upstream and then delivered downstream. So human, structural, and customer capital work together to create the asset, the asset for the organization. Your knowledge of the internal systems, the processes, the procedures, those are sacrosanct, you lived with them throughout the business evolution. Knowledge of the customer base, the information that you have, the richer is that resource, the more accurate is your decision making, and the lesser risk you're taking. And then the knowledge for the knowledge's sake, which is the skills, the competencies, and the tacit knowledge that your employees have. So those are the 10 principles. I would like to think that innovation is about opportunity. So, sometimes out of failure comes good. I mean, this is how the Japanese basically demonstrated to the world how to manage innovation. So this is an example, 7 sources of innovative opportunity. For example, I mentioned the 2-in-1 shampoo. Dimensions failed. Procter & Gamble said, good idea, let's go in and do it right. So somebody's misery was somebody's success. Somebody's failure was somebody's success. That's an example. So you learn from failure. There's nothing, innovation is not guaranteed. Okay? So every failure, if the lessons learned are there, then it could be a source of innovative opportunity. Incongruity, basically, understanding the gap between what we have now and how far we are from what the customer really wants. Because what we have now is an effort, isn't it? Some some energy has been put into creating it to where it is. So can we capitalize on that opportunity? Can we have another use for it? A lot of innovations happen by mistake. They are misfits for one customer type, but they're ideal for another customer type. The process need means sometimes we have a brilliant idea, but when we come to hand it over to supply chain to produce it, it doesn't work because we are limited by the technology. And that could be a source of innovation as well, an opportunity. Structural change, like basically re-engineering, you break the old cycle, you integrate bits together, and that can give you ideas about how to work. And we might hear something about that tonight. Demographics, pressure from outside, changes in the population, changes in the need, changes in the education of the consumer can also make us think out of the box. And the mood swings, I mean, the fashions and the fads. I mean, in the mid-80s, for example, it was the launch of the era for environmental consciousness, and a lot of innovations started to have that in mind. It really created a lot of breakthroughs. I mean, if somebody takes time to document the technological breakthroughs, the product breakthroughs, I mean, it was a wonderful opportunity. I mean, I had the chance to work with the brand manager of an aeroperspirant called deoperspirant called Kayomi, Project Kayomi, which was creating an aerosol, and basically which is based on water molecules, and which is based on freshness for the body. It doesn't block the pores of the skin, and it was well ahead of its time. So those are the kind of opportunities. And of course, having access to new knowledge, because new knowledge is new fuel. So let me just now finish off, before I hand over to Trevor, a roadmap, what I call 5 business processes for innovation. And bear in mind, as I said, global innovation is not just the downstream or the customer perspective where we hand over the product or the service, but it's very much about the creation cycle of innovation. So, road mapping, scanning, collaborating, sparking, and shepherding. The first one is road mapping. Basically, it just means you need to have some navigation equipment and saying, where is this business going to go? And where are we going to create a breakthrough? Where are we going to really make a difference? And it's not just about a dream. It's not just about saying we have a vision statement, or we have a scenario, so we have some strategies. It's really visualizing how the innovation cycle that you have is going to impact and affect a certain global community. And because you could impact globally, but you could impact in some geographies only. Global does not mean the whole universe. It just means that it has transnational appeal and usefulness. Scanning, it comes really from the mapping process, which means that looking at the business from an internal and external perspective. For example, understanding competition, understanding the suppliers. Can the suppliers take 90 degree? In Japan, for example, when the big businesses started to go global, I think in the Kobe area of Japan in the late 80s, 2,000 businesses closed down because they were focusing on regional, local, and national abilities to serve their customers. And as the customers expanded, the suppliers could not respond, so they had to be dropped. And Japan started to rely more on suppliers from South Korea and other countries. So that's very important, understanding the power of your business partners, whether they can go with you. And internally, understanding the capabilities, having some metrics on capability, having some benchmarks about, what is the strength of the industry, what is the strength of the competition, because you don't want it to break. You want the cycle of innovation to reach out but remain strong, because replenishing the market is really where the strength is, not going it once and then flopping. You stimulate demand, you generate an interest, you create some kind of loyalty. What comes next? The customer says more, you know, and you have to have that ability. And your suppliers, you know, are absolutely critical. Collaborating, I just listed here some forms of collaborations. Obviously, employees internally and externally working in teams. But partners like universities, for example, you know, they have inventions, they can create new technologies, they can do new formulations, if you have chemistry labs and what have you. The customers as partners as well, suppliers, and of course, investors. Number 4 is parking. It means that, you know, really getting it going and maintaining it, just like an engine. What fuels innovation are people and information flow. So having at the very basic level, having employee suggestions, you know, can help. Getting a continuous cycle of reflection and feedback from the customer and prompts can help. Prompting the market by saying, you know, what will be the need, and getting the perception and the forecasts of customer and consumers through market research is very important. And allowing brainstorming, I mean, allowing people, rewarding them for their ideas. And of course, focus groups looking at specific innovations. The last one is an interesting one. It's called shepherding. Ideas can die very quickly. Ideas need nurturing. They need to grow and mature. And basically, the shepherds are those people who have the responsibility for creating the culture of global innovation, but also to protect the new ideas. You know, they are the ones who have the vision. They are the ones who promote the idea and its impact. But also, they are the ones who have worked probably as project leaders. They are the product champions. So that is really a wide perspective on global innovation, what it means, what are the critical factors, how it's going to work in practice, particularly in a knowledge-based era.